You are watching the Poor Boys Horology podcast, the podcast for watch enthusiasts on a budget. Your host for today's podcast is Dr. Ed DeVries, an amateur horologist whose personal collection includes Timex, Rolex, and everything in between. If you are interested in dive watches, dress watches, designer watches, military watches, automatic watches, hand-winding watches, quartz watches, or pocket watches, the Poor Boys Horology podcast is about to become your favorite podcast. So click like and subscribe. Then sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of the Poor Boys Horology podcast.
Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. No, this is not Jody, and no, this is not the Just One More Watch channel, but every time I watch one of his videos and watch that, hello, it's like, I'd love to open up a Poor Boys Horology podcast that way. So I thought I'd give it a try. Hopefully Jody's not too offended, because I know I didn't do it nearly as enthusiastically or as awesomely as he does it, nor could I even attempt to do it with that awesome Sean Connery accent. But I would like to welcome you to the November broadcast of the Poor Boys Horology podcast. And what a tumultuous roller coaster the month of November has been. But before we get started, let's have the customary wristwatch check. Oh, I've got two on today. Why two? Got the Omega Seamaster, I've got the Rolex Datejust. And there's a reason for that, because November has been a contest between Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. Of course, President Trump likes to wear the Rolex. Joe Biden is a fan of the Seamasters, and you often see him wearing one. And so I've got these two wristwatches on today in honor of those two gentlemen. Here's the watch I had taken off to put the two on. And that, of course, is my red-strapped Casio Duro that I received for my birthday in October from our good friend, subscriber, and viewer, Jay Cook. Thank you again, Jay. I normally don't wear a watch for a whole month. I just have kept this on. I've enjoyed it. I really have. My wife's even commented on the fact that haven't changed my watch in weeks, which is unusual and unlike me. Anyways, this Casio Duro, maybe I need to do a whole show on the Duro one day. It's an amazing watch. It might be the best $44 you'll ever spend on the Casio Duro. Anyways, let's get to this podcast. And the subject of this podcast is going to be watches worn by Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, and watches worn by Joseph R. Biden, the former Vice President of the United States, and, of course, the person who is currently trying to steal this election or the re-election of President Trump. And who knows? Biden might just pull it off. Who knows? But political commentary aside, both of these men have nice watch collections. And I'm not going to give you the entirety of their watch collections, but I'm going to show you some pictures here of these two men. You're going to see watches on their wrist. We're going to talk a little bit about the watches that are on their wrist, watches that they're commonly seen wearing. And you're going to see that both men have really nice watch collections. Of course, President Trump can afford a watch collection. He's a billionaire. He's one of the richest men in the world. And he can afford to drop $30,000, $40,000 on a watch and then go out and use it to play golf. Joe Biden, his watches aren't nearly in that price range, but he has some really nice ones that are in the $3,500 to $7,500 price range. And hey, when you got your son out there making, $180,000 a month or whatever it is that Hunter makes to supposedly be a board member for Burisma or whatever that Ukrainian energy company is, and when you got the Chinese throwing money at you, hey, you could go out and buy a $5,000 watch. And obviously, both of these men have some great watches in their collections, and so that's what we want to look at today. But first, a word from our sponsor, the Barnes Review, and then in 45 seconds we'll be back, and we'll be looking at those watch collections.
Open your web browser and type in www.barnesreview.org and discover the Barnes Review magazine. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There is no more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review magazine in its print form, or in convenient electronic delivery. Our host has been a subscriber to both formats for years. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review.
The first of the president's watches is a Rolex Model 18038. It is a day-date watch. It's called the President. That's not its official title, but then again, hey, the Batman is not an official Rolex title, neither is the Hulk. But this watch is called the President because it was popularized first by President Lyndon B. Johnson. This particular watch model, which was introduced in 1956, has only been made in precious metals. 18 karat gold, 18 karat white gold, 18 karat yellow gold, and platinum editions. They've not made a stainless steel version of this watch. They've only made it in the expensive precious metals. This is a watch that retails for tens of thousands of dollars. And they only make a limited number of them. The design has been unchanged since 1956. And this is the ultimate power watch. And this is the ultimate show of wealth and position. And so it's only fitting, of course, that the President of the United States should wear the Rolex President. And now here is a picture from 2010. And let me just say, for all of you folks who wonder about Sleepy Joe, and what was that? Is it Darius Drucker's, the country and western singer? And he sings that song, Old Town Road. And that's been vocalized recently. New lyrics have been attached to it. I'm gonna take Biden Joe to the old folk home because his mind, it don't work no more. Anyways, Joe Biden was on the top of his game back in 2010. And the picture you're seeing here is a 2010 picture of Joe Biden. He's in the East Wing of the White House. And he is wearing a watch here that is a beautiful watch. It is a first generation Tissot T-Touch watch on a rubber strap. And that watch retailed back then for about $750. Sports watches, I think they fit his personality. I live just about a half an hour or so from the Vice President's home in Delaware. I don't live, but the Vice President lives just across the border, and I live just a couple of miles from the Maryland-Delaware border. Anyways, probably riding his bike and exercising and jogging, and he's still a very active guy for his age. And so he wears a lot of sports watches, and this Tissot is an excellent choice. And again, this picture was taken back in 2010. And speaking of sports watches, this is President Trump's version of a sports watch. This is a Patek Philippe Eclipse. This is very much a gentleman's watch. I know a lot of people, especially on the political left, do not see the president as a quote-unquote a gentleman, but this is very much a gentleman's watch. By the way, this is a very vintage piece. It's a very classic piece, and if you can find one of these, you're going to pay at least $45,000 for it, and I'm going to guess that the president probably bought this one back in the 80s. If you look at his wrist there and you look at the watch, you'll see it's wearing very tightly. These watch straps, or bracelets rather is the proper term, the bracelet on this watch does not have links, so you can't remove links or add links. What you have to do is you have to have gold cut from the band, cut from the bracelet, or you have to have gold added to the bracelet in order to get the length that you want. And so the president would have to take this to a jeweler, and they would have to resize this bracelet much like you would have a ring resized, and they would add gold to the bracelet. It's an expensive procedure. It's a detailed procedure. I'm sure it's one that he could afford. Obviously, he's not made the effort to do that. And so you can see that this watch is wearing very tightly upon his wrist. But this is apparently, for the president, I guess when you're a billionaire, you can have a $45,000 watch and wear it as your beater, wear it as your sports watch. You can go to the golf course and wear this watch. Personally, it's not my taste. It really isn't. But there are a lot of people who really like this watch, and for a lot of people, this is kind of the pinnacle of horology. And obviously, the president, a lot of people would say, is expressing very good taste in wearing this particular wrist watch. One thing that really impresses me about this watch, and that is from a horological perspective, is look at how thin the case is of this watch. It's only 4 millimeters thick, and it's a fully automatic. I want to say it's a 17 jewel, maybe a 21 jewel. I should have looked it up before I did this broadcast, but it is a multi-jewel, fully automatic, mechanical movement, and it fits in this very small, very thin 4 millimeter case. It's one of the smallest, thinnest mechanical watch movements in the history of the world. It's just an engineering marvel, if you will. And one of the things that impresses me about this watch, of course, I like to wear bigger watches. Again, like I said, this isn't necessarily my taste, but the fact that the watchmakers there could take such an intricate, detailed, quality movement and engineer it so that it would fit in such a small case. But definitely, this is a watch the president is wearing, this Patek Eclipse, that I'm sure when he goes to social functions, it gets a lot of attention. Certainly a lot more attention than the Rolex president would get. I mean, hey, even Tony Soprano wears the Rolex president, and so this gets a lot more attention than the president watch. The day-date Rolex would get. A lot of wealthy, powerful people wear those, and not a whole lot of these Pateks floating around. And the next watch we're going to see here on Vice President Joe Biden's wrist, these are more recent pictures. This is a watch that he's been seen wearing on the campaign trail, and it is an Omega Seamaster 300. Of course, this is a watch that has become popular because you often see it on the wrist of everyone's favorite spy, James Bond 007. And so this watch comes in a few different variations. One of the variations is a blue dial, one is a black dial. Both are very popular, and I've seen Biden wearing both configurations, which tells me that Biden owns at least 2 of these Omega Seamasters, maybe more. Now, this is a watch that retails for about $5,500, but you can get them for about $3,000, maybe $3,500 on the used market, and you can get one for about $4,000 on the gray market. It's just a versatile, a beautiful watch. In fact, if I had my choice as far as a watch, both the looks and the functionality, I think if I had my choice between the Rolex Submariner and the Omega Seamaster, I would probably take the Omega. But here we see Joe Biden just rocking these Omegas, and they look really good on his wrist. They look really good on just about anybody's wrist. It's one of the reasons why I'm inclined to lean, if I had to pick one collection over the other, as far as cool factor is concerned, I might be tempted to give this one to Joe Biden. And here is another watch that the president is often seen wearing, and it is a Vacheron Constantin. Look at how thin this case is. We talked about the thin case of the Patek. This is another micro thin case. Again, you're looking at a 4 millimeter case here. It's amazing how these Swiss watchmakers have taken these intricate movements and they made them with such tiny pieces that they can fit in such a small, such a thin, such an elegant case. It's got a square face here, and there are any of a number of reasons why watches and clocks generally have round faces. I'm not going to take the time to explain it to you. You go into a whole new level of watchmaking when you go into the square face and the square crystal and so forth. And this Vacheron, it's just a beautiful piece. Frequently, again, this is about a $35,000 watch. The strap, the leather strap on this watch costs more than the next watch that the president will be shown wearing or the next watch that Joe Biden will be shown wearing. And here you see Joe Biden wearing an Apple Watch. And, I've thought about doing a show entirely on smartwatches. I've almost pulled the trigger a couple times of buying an Apple Watch because I have the Apple iPhone and the MacBook and the iMac, and it would sync with all of my other Apple products. But I just don't know that I want a watch that I have to literally charge every day. And to be honest, even though now they say the newer generations of the Apple Watches are completely waterproof, that you can swim in them, that you can shower in them, I just don't know that I trust it. And to be honest, there's just something about winding your watch every day. I like to wind my watches. I do. And there's just something about a mechanical watch. I've never really taken a shining to these smartwatches. I did buy one for my wife a couple of years ago, one of the first generations. And to be honest, it's sitting in her jewelry box. I don't even think it's been charged up in over 2 years. But Joe Biden is rocking this Apple Watch here, and maybe he has to use it to check his pulse. I don't know. But the watch does look very elegant. You see here he's wearing it with a suit, and it looks nice with a suit. And so that is one of the nice things about these Apple Watches. They've designed them in such a way you could wear it as a sports watch. You could wear it as a dress watch. You can wear it, wearing your workout clothes. You could wear it with a tuxedo or a shirt and tie. It's a versatile watch. It goes multiple directions. Whoever is the engineer at Apple, whoever is the designer at Apple, the artist at Apple, who designed this watch, they did a beautiful job of designing something that just fits in every situation. It fits with everything, everywhere, all the time. So in that sense, kudos to Apple. And the vice president is seen here rocking this Apple Watch. It just shows that he has very wide taste, and his collection is very broad, very eclectic, and that's not a bad thing. As I've said in previous broadcasts, hey, you buy the watches that you like, you buy the watches that make you happy, you buy the watches that do what you need them to do. And that's what the vice president is obviously doing here. Of course, Joe Biden, old Navy guy, Donald Trump, guy who likes to take expensive vacations. Myself, I can't afford to take expensive vacations, but thanks to Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line, I can take what seems like an expensive vacation for very little dinero. And what better place to show off your watches than on a cruise ship? So for the next 15 seconds or so, we're going to have a brief commercial from our friends over at Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line, and then we'll be back with the last two watches, one for Joe Biden and one for President Donald Trump.
Sail on a 2-night Bahamas Paradise cruise from just $149. Cruise and Bahamas resort stay options also available at amazing prices. Call 800-814-7100. That's 800-814-7100.
I know that both President Donald Trump and Joe Biden have more than 4 watches apiece in their collections, but we only have so much time for today's Poor Boys Horology podcast, and so I'm only going to give you 4 watches from each of these gentlemen. Of course, the 3 that we have covered so far being the Philippe Patek for the president, being the Vacheron for the president, being the Rolex President for the president, and then being the Omega Seamaster for Vice President Joe Biden, being the Apple smartwatch for Vice President Joe Biden, and that first generation Tissot sports watch for Joe Biden. These were higher end of horology watches. Now we're going to go to lower end of horology watches. In fact, these 2 watches are going to be quartz watches. They're going to be relatively inexpensive watches. And for Joe Biden, it's going to be a Seiko. And for the president, it's going to be a Trump-branded watch. Yes, Donald Trump had his own micro brand of watches once upon a time. If you remember watching The Apprentice, he had all kinds of things he tried. He had Trump steaks. He had Trump Ice, which was his own brand of bottled water. He had Trump ice cream. he had Trump neckties. He had Trump watches. I remember, I want to say it was in the early 2000s that he appeared with Conan O'Brien. Might have been around the time that he was running for president under the Constitution Party ticket. I've tried to find the footage for it online to show it to you here. I can't seem to get my hands on it. But there was a Conan O'Brien late night show that I remember way back, again, early 2000s, probably some 16, 17, 18 years ago now. And he was wearing a Trump-branded necktie, and he was wearing a Trump-branded watch. And Conan said something about how he liked the president's necktie. And so the president took his necktie off, and he gave it to Conan O'Brien as a gift. He said, well, here, it's one of my Trump ties. He said, you can have this. And Conan O'Brien immediately responded. He said, oh, and I like your watch, too. And so I say the president, he wasn't the president then. He was just Mr. Donald Trump. I guess he was president because he was president of the Trump Organization. But Donald Trump gave him the wristwatch as well. And Donald Trump had a Trump line of clothing and jewelry. They had cufflinks, they had tie tacks, they had neckties, they had dress shirts. I think they might have even made some Trump suits for a short time. And they had Trump watches, which were really just, Chinese-made quartz watches with a Trump brand on them. But Donald Trump was wearing one that night on Conan O'Brien. He would wear them occasionally on The Apprentice. And you would see him in other times and places wearing them. I've got one here on the screen that you're looking at. They were nice enough watches for what they were. I think they were a little overpriced. You were paying for the Trump name, the Trump brand, if you will. But these Trump watches, the truth is I wish I would have picked one up when I had the opportunity. The reason I didn't is because I'm more into mechanical watches than battery-powered watches. But it would be nice to have in the watch box. It would just be a piece of horology history, especially since afterwards Donald Trump would become the 45th president of the United States. And here we have Joe Biden. And you see him here. And he is wearing a Seiko. It's a battery-powered, it's a quartz watch. This is a watch that you can pick up for about $200. What I find most interesting about this watch is that it has an alarm feature and additionally a chronograph, but primarily the alarm feature. And not a lot of dress watches that have alarms, but this one does. It's a nice little stainless steel and gold two-tone that Joe Biden is seen wearing frequently, maybe because of the alarm feature. I mean, maybe they call him Sleepy Joe for a reason. And so he has to make sure that he can set his alarm so he knows he can wake up from his nap to do his press conference, or wake up from his nap to, put on the mask and do whatever the next thing is that he needs to be seen doing. But this is a watch that it's not an ostentatious watch. It's not a flashy watch. It's just a basic, common, everyday watch. It's an affordable watch. It's an everyman's watch. He calls himself Lunch Bucket Joe. This is the kind of watch that a guy who takes his own lunch to work in an office would wear. I had a watch similar to this back in the 90s, and I wish I would have kept it. I don't even remember what happened to it. I think I may have given it away to somebody who needed a watch, and I think I gave it away, way back when. I don't remember. These are the 4 watches for our 2 would-be presidents of the United States. Obviously, one of them is going to be inaugurated on January 20th. You could probably guess by some of the things that I've said during the course of this show. I've tried to be non-political. It's really hard. You can probably guess who I voted for. You can probably guess who I'm rooting for. This whole election is being contested in court right now. But I'm also a realist. And I also realize that there is a chance that Joe Biden will be inaugurated as the 46th president of the United States. That does not scare me near as much as my fear that they will immediately use the 25th Amendment to declare him incompetent due to maybe dementia. And then Kamala Harris becomes the 47th president of the United States. That, folks, scares the literal bejesus out of me. But if Joe Biden can at least exercise the taste and the logic and the common sense and the good sense that he has used in choosing his watch collection, then his governance would not necessarily scare me. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, I don't know. Maybe I should do a podcast on Kamala Harris's watch collection. Can Kamala Harris even tell time? I guess we're about to find out. I would like to encourage you, because the Poor Boys Horology podcast is coming up on the end of its first year, and I need to make a decision. Are we going to do year 2? We will do a December podcast. We will finish out the year, because I had advertisers who, when I launched this project, they paid for a year's worth of advertising. That was our friends over at the Barnes Review, and I need to give them what they paid for, and I'm more than happy to do that. I enjoy doing these podcasts. There's the time issue. I'm already hosting 3 radio shows. I am the contributing editor of a magazine. I am the editor of a weekly e-zine, which is, you say, well, that's just an email newsletter. No, it's not. It's really an online magazine that goes out to over 10,000 people every week, and it takes several hours of my week to put it together. I'm also the pastor of a church. I'm doing a lot of things. I'm a teacher. I'm the president of a college with 900 students. Most of those are in the third world, and so I'm teaching them online. But still, it's time-consuming. And so, for me to continue with these podcasts, I need for someone to commit to a year's worth of advertising next year. Why? It's not that I don't enjoy doing them. It's because I've got to allocate my time. And unfortunately, as you well know, the reality of the world is time goes to money. And so I would like for somebody to email me, poorboyshorologypodcast@aol.com. It's down at the bottom of the screen, poorboyshorologypodcast@aol.com. And I want you to commit to doing an advertisement in 12 of these podcasts. I'm going to give you a sweetheart of a deal. And that sweetheart of a deal is going to be this: $150. And you get an advertisement, a commercial, in each of the 12 broadcasts that will appear of the Poor Boys Horology podcast in calendar year 2021. And you say, well, that's barely over $10 an episode. Yes, it is. And these are starting to take off, because our October podcast already has over 1,000 viewers now. And because of it, we saw our subscribers jump up. And it's only going to keep growing. And the old broadcasts stay on there. And so when this podcast has taken off, when we're finally into the thousands of subscribers, and even all of the old episodes have caught up to thousands of views, what you bought for $15 will end up still on the internet, and thousands of people are going to see it in the future. At least that's the potential. And I want to give you that potential. And if somebody will make that small investment, then I'm going to put forth the time to make 12 more of these Poor Boys Horology podcasts in the year 2021. So email me, poorboyshorologypodcast@aol.com, and say, Dr. Ed, I would really like to advertise in your podcast. I would like to get in on the ground floor of what you're doing. I want you to keep doing it. I enjoy watching your podcast. I just keep this thing going. Today is Wednesday, the 25th of November. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. I want to wish everybody who's watching this podcast on the day it's released, I want to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving. For the rest of you, I want to say that I hope you had a very happy Thanksgiving. Myself, I normally spend Thanksgiving out of the country. I would normally be, for example, last Thanksgiving, I was on a beach in the Dominican Republic on Thanksgiving. How awesome was that? What did I have for Thanksgiving dinner? I had a big porterhouse steak. I did have some of the other trimmings of Thanksgiving. I had some cornbread stuffing, had some mashed potatoes and gravy, had some green bean casserole, had some cranberry sauce, had a pumpkin pie for dessert. Just not a fan of the turkey. But this year I went out and bought 2 turkeys. I went out and bought the 2 biggest turkeys that the grocery store had. Also bought a ham. I bought all the stuff to make a big Thanksgiving dinner. My wife hasn't had to cook one for however many years now, because we're always out of the country on Thanksgiving. But this year, And I had an opportunity. There was, I don't want to drop names, but let's just say that the highest elected official of one of the Caribbean nations invited me to their country this week. And the only reason I'm not there is because of all of the COVID nonsense. All the things I would have to do to get on the plane. They would have bought the plane ticket. But all the things I'd had to have done to get on that plane, it's like, you know what? I said, can we push this to 2021, and I'll come and I'll be happy to speak for you and to be there with you. But can we do it then after the whole COVID nonsense? I'm not generally a fan of Thanksgiving, which is why I normally spend it out of the country. But this year, I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving. You say, why? Why am I looking forward to turkey when I'm not a turkey fan? Why am I looking forward to watching football? I'm a baseball guy. Why are you looking forward to watching football tomorrow? Because it's what normal Americans do. And it's just normal. And our world has been turned so upside down, and our government has done so much in the name of this COVID-19, and just to do something normal. Just to be a normal American for a day. And if that means that I have to choke down turkey and watch football, hey, I'm looking forward to it. And I hope that you have a great Thanksgiving tomorrow, or that when you're watching this belatedly, that you had a great Thanksgiving.